Have you ever wanted to turn a simple 2D image into a fully textured 3D model without writing any code? In this walkthrough, you'll learn how to automate the process of uploading an image, converting it into a 3D model using Fal AI's Trellis API, and saving the result directly into your Google Drive using n8n. This solution is ideal for developers, designers, and anyone working with 3D content, AR, or game environments. Let's see the demo. An image URL is submitted through a form. n8n sends that URL to Fal AI's Trellis endpoint, waits for the 3D mesh to be processed, retrieves the downloadable 3D file, and uploads it to a specific folder in Google Drive. The entire process runs automatically in the background. Now the workflow consists of these main steps: accepting a user-submitted image URL through a form, sending the image to the Trellis API from Fal AI for 3D generation, waiting for the process to complete, checking the generation status, fetching the 3D model URL, downloading the 3D file, uploading the file into Google Drive. Now come to node-by-node explanation. The first is Form Submission Trigger. This is a form trigger node. It starts the workflow when a user submits a 2D image URL. The form includes a single field labeled image, which is required. Create 3D image. This node sends a POST request to Fal AI's Trellis endpoint. It includes authentication using your Fal API key and passes the image URL as part of the JSON body. Several rendering parameters like sampling steps, texture size, and mesh simplification are also included in the payload. The response contains a request ID used to check the status of the model generation. Wait 60 seconds. This node delays the workflow for 60 seconds. It allows enough time for Trellis to process the 3D model before checking the result. Get status. This node sends a GET request using the request ID to check whether the 3D model is ready. It calls the Fal status endpoint and retrieves the current status of the request. Check completion. This IF node checks if the status is marked as completed. If so, the workflow continues to fetch the model. If not, the workflow goes back to the wait node and checks again later. This loop continues until the status becomes completed. Get URL of 3D image. Once the model is complete, this HTTP request node retrieves the final response URL, which contains the model mesh URL pointing to the downloadable .glb file. Get file 3D image. This node sends a GET request to the model mesh URL to download the 3D file data. No authentication is required here, as the URL is public. Upload 3D image. This Google Drive node uploads the downloaded 3D file to a predefined folder in your Google Drive. The file name is dynamically generated using the current timestamp and the original file name returned by Trellis. Here you can see the setup notes are also present. 2 sticky notes in the workflow provide important reminders. The first note instructs you to create an account on Fal.ai and obtain your API key. This key is then used in the HTTP request headers as a bearer token. The second note reminds you to correctly configure the API key in the header auth section of the HTTP request nodes. Requirements. To run this workflow successfully, you need the following: an active Fal AI account with access to the Trellis model and API key, an n8n instance with HTTP request and Google Drive, OAuth credentials configured, a Google Drive folder where 3D models will be stored, a public image URL to test the form submission. This workflow enables you to automate the entire pipeline of converting 2D images into 3D models and storing them efficiently. It removes the manual overhead and creates a seamless experience for users and teams working with 3D content. You can extend this further by adding custom validations, user authentication, or even integrating it with 3D viewing platforms. Let automation do the heavy lifting.